So as I said, I've divided you guys into teams. The teams are more based on, they're not based on friendship by any means. They're based on what stories I felt like you should go together to make them more or less equivalent teams or equivalent benefit or whatever to each team as far as filling the page that they're assigned to fill. So you each you should have 5 stories. If you end up with 4, you can probably make it work if you have some good art. If you don't have good art, you better go get some good art. Even if you end up getting a standalone piece of art all by itself and just write a caption for it. If you do standalone art, you're going to box the photograph or art and put a small headline above, typically below it, and then the caption, and explain everything you need to do in the caption. So if you end up creating your own center of focus standalone art, you can do that. But hopefully you have enough already to take care of it. For example, Team A, you see 4 people are selected up here. At least by my original estimate, I didn't see any art for it, any photographs or anything with it. So that how you lay that out will probably be handicapped by that. You're going to have to maybe make it a 1-column story or something unless you come up with more art. This column underneath the C, it doesn't represent the C. The C's are these letters are for the team. So Team A is yellow, Team B is green, Team C is blue, and Team D is kind of a pink. So that doesn't relate to what's underneath it here. This column here is the name of the story, or something that represents the story. Maybe not the name of it, but the name I gave to it anyway. The second column here is the length. I took the number of words and divided by 30, which in my past has come up to more or less the number of column inches. A column inch is the number of inches deep. If you were to put it in one column, how many inches deep would it be? So this first one is 25 inches long. So actually, we don't have a column that long, but it's just give us an idea of how much space it's going to take. And so this will help you in doing a rough design of your page, of what, how much space will this story take, and so forth. Obviously, as you do a rough design, you're going to need to know what photographs you have. I hope in my pocket. I have here not an editor, real editor. I have at least, in most cases, at least comments on the stories, and maybe I may have marked some in red or something as a problem area that you can go take a look at and see what I thought was a problem with it. I maybe didn't tell you exactly what the problem was, but I marked some things in red for you to take a look at. In some cases, I've done a little bit more than that. Going through 96 stories is really hard. So some things I went into more detail on than others, just because I felt compelled to do it. Who knows? I wasn't as tired sometimes as I was at other times. I was on this till after midnight last night, getting yours ready after my second tutorial got over it, close to 9 o'clock. So you can make a copy of this if you want to, and it'll have the edited stuff that I edited, the comments and edits that I put into these stories would be to your benefit. So this will be available as we split up the teams. Anyway, as I don't have them all together, so here are 4 stories, but then down here is another one here. So we have 5 on that team. Here's the 6th one. Now, why would I have 6? I'm intended to only put 5. The reason why there's 6 is this one's about election, this one's basketball, this one's a gay Chinese star, ASB Chinese warning during election. So there are 2 about the election. You may have to combine them. You have to take a look at them as a team or individually, however you want to do it. That's up to you. Your final submission is individual, but I'm allowing you to work on this stuff as teams to get your stories ready and stuff. So there's 2 stories about elections. So you may decide to combine them in one story and co-byline it, that will be something you'll want to discuss. So you have 6 stories, but really 5 subjects. With the second team in green, here's one about food thief. Go down USA violence, second one on USA violence. This person, I may have handed hers in, but I didn't have it. It wasn't there when I went through the first time. If somebody has not finished a story, they can get it done. There'll be a deduction for being late, but let me know that you're handing it in and give it to your teammates so you can use it on your page. Another one about food thief here, and then one about global flooding and warming. So you have here 2 about the food thief and 2 about violence. So you might actually say you only have 4 stories. In the sense, 4 subjects, 2 on food thief, 2 on violence, 1 on global warming. Is there another one? Oh, the one at the bottom is about a game, a computer game. So you have 5 subjects, or 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You actually only have 4 subjects. When you have more than one article on a subject, you have 2 choices. You can combine them, or you can make one a sidebar to the second one. Remember what a sidebar is? What's a sidebar? I've referred to it a couple of times in lecture. Anybody? A sidebar is a second story that's not as important as the first story. So it may be that if you have 2 stories on a subject, that you could keep the second story, but maybe cut it down somewhat. Or maybe by its very nature, it's supplemental, it's not exactly the same. And so you keep both of them. This is where also I said you may design them in a package. So you may have a headline going across the top about the food thief, and then a photo or a group of photos in the center, and then one story come down the left side of the art and one going down the right side of the art. So the rectangle, the modular formatting is 2 stories. Now, in most cases, I think that, for the Chinese, probably is the easiest one to make 2 stories out of, because you have one about, I don't remember for sure. I've seen so many stories about elections in the other groups too. I'm not absolutely sure. Oh, excuse me. There's only, oh, no, I'm sorry. You only have one about elections. You have one about violence. You have one about food thief. Okay. So, I don't know. You're going to take a look at them. I don't remember them well enough because I'm also mixing them up with stories in the other groups. But you, again, may find that one of them you can make a sidebar, a second story that's related to the first story. But you're going to have to choose which one to highlight, which one's going to be your main story, and the second one you may cut down a little bit, reduce its length. That doesn't affect the person's grade, particularly I'm not going to look at, I'm not grading it based on what you do on the page. I'm grading it based on the story. So good, bad, or ugly, whatever, it's graded separately. So it doesn't really matter if you decide as a group, or ultimately it's not really a group decision. You can discuss it as a group, and maybe as a group you can decide, well, if we cut this story, this is how we would cut it. But say the person on your team who actually wrote it says, I'm not going to cut my story. I'm going to make mine the main story, and I'm going to cut the other story. I don't care. You're handing these in individually. So just because the group decides that there's one better than the other one, somebody else in the group may say, no, I'm doing it the other way around, and that's fine. I don't care. I'll be grading your layouts, your design and production individually. So when we get to blue, we see we have I think, 3 stories about the Chinese rape and suicide victim that's 20 years old. I'm not sure it's worth 3 stories. I mean, it's an interesting story, but too many people wrote about it, let me put it that way. So we have 3 stories, and again, you obviously you can't run 3 stories on it. And for one thing, I would say that most of the stories are pretty much redundant to each other. So of all of them that should collapse to one, it's probably that story, even 3 into 1. But you may, can't how many stories you have. You have 1, 2, 3 up here, but they're really 2 topics. A third topic, that's the same topic. Here's a 4th topic. So in this one, you really only have 4 subjects. So you may have to figure out maybe how to do a sidebar. Maybe the sidebar is some additional comments by the local students, since that's the localized part in all of them, are the comments. You could make them into one. If you choose to go on your front page with 4 stories, combining, in this case, all of the rape and suicide stories into one, that's up to you also. I will let you go to 4 stories if you wish to, because that's what you have. You have 4 subjects. And so unless you decide to do one a sidebar, you only have 4 subjects. So I'll let you decide what you want to do with that. With the pink one, we have grad programs, construction, ASEC, dress, and anyway, the store. So these are all 5. This one's maybe the easiest one. There's no redundancy. You have 5 stories, and they're all separate. So in that sense, it's easy. You don't have to discuss what to make a sidebar or whatever. So most of them have a sidebar issue or an issue of some redundancy, and what do we do about it? So that's one reason why I put you on teams together, because I don't want to have the same story on different pages of this part of the publication. As it is, we probably will, in the sense that I have 4 tutorials, and some of these stories have been done in other tutorials as well. So the rape story may be another in the pages put together by another tutorial, and I'm probably just going to put them all together anyway, because anyway, it gets complicated. I didn't want to start throwing stories away. You needed to have 4 or 5 stories at least to do your page, to do your assignment. So that's how I chose to do it. Obviously, you do need a center of focus. If you're not satisfied with the art, as I said, you can go get some more art. That's the team or an individual on the team can decide to do that. A lot of people were fairly lazy with their photography, so I tried to give at least one story with good art on it for each team. I'm not sure that I succeeded in this class. Let me see, Team A. The ASB Media Center, basketball. You don't have great art in any of these? Well, the election maybe does. One, it's not, if it's, well, the one I'm thinking about has potential. It may be this one that also has a video. If it does, you could use the Earth View. Talked about that before. You could to grab a photo out of the video, and so you could get a photo out of the video. Otherwise, the video doesn't do as much good. But you could maybe grab a photo out of it. So anyway, Team 2 then, Food Thief. Not a lot of great art there, I don't think, as I recall. USA Violence. I don't remember. I see a 3C on this this column here. 3C means I'm not impressed with the art. 3B, yeah, okay. I didn't give very many A's, so B is about as good as a grade as I gave. So that basically means there's 3 pieces of art and I rate it as kind of a B level art. And there are very few A's given. At some points I put B pluses and B minuses. I couldn't bring myself to bring an A, but anyway, you may see a B minus or something like that. Global warming, there was some pretty good. It's off of the internet. I hope it's okay to use it. I called it C mainly because it was all internet, and I don't know how it's going to, once you make it big enough to be your center of focus, I don't know if it's going to be very good. And I don't know that we have permission to use it. Probably nobody will care. If somebody doesn't want us to use it, they'll tell us and we'll bring it down. This one it doesn't have great stuff to it. So anyway, I tried the best I could to give you something that you could get some, if you don't already have a good piece of art, that you could get someplace somehow and use it as your center of focus. Again, you can help each other with the stories. I expect that all of your actual production will be distinctly yours. So I don't want to see the same page reproduced by everybody in the team. No, not that. You will have your own page. Your assignment, just to make sure you understand, because there's always questions on this, is to make sure you fill up the first page. It is a regular news page. It's not the front page of the, we don't put a flag on it or anything like that. It's a full page, but it's just stories. And the only requirement is I do want you to jump at least one story. So I want some jump on your page 2, but that's it. So you might have a very small jump on page 2 and the rest is just going to be blank. When we actually put this together as a complete newspaper, we'll have to put several jumps on one page, and it won't be continued on page 2. We'll have to change it to continued on page whatever all these jumps are going to. So we'll worry about that later. And so when you upload it to Moodle, upload a PDF, create a PDF out of your pages, your 2 pages. But at some point, I'll need to get your Quark file too in order to finalize the newspaper. I do not know yet whether you'll be able to upload that to Moodle. I'm going to test it myself to see how it uploads, whether it will accept it, and whether we can get a good version of it when we upload it. So I will test that. I suspect we can. And so in other words, I will probably say that you can upload more than one file, and you will upload your PDF and your Quark file both. Is probably what I'll be doing. Oh, down this other column, let me explain that real quick too. So the story length is this column underneath A, which doesn't relate to A, but it is underneath A. The next one is story content of value. This by no means is your overall grade, but it may be part of your grade, but it's mostly for our purposes here, is to compare which ones I think are better than other stories for a variety of reasons. In some cases, it might be because you made your story, I may have lowered the value of it because you associated your stories to a particular event. Like the taxes, for example, you may have said taxes, the consumption tax will be done away on June 1st. Well, nobody's going to see this until after July 1st. So you've written your story, it's already outdated. And so if you've done that, by the way, you as editors need to try to figure out how to correct that. So you need to do a little bit of rewriting because you can't be looking to the future to June 1st when nobody's going to read it until July at the soonest. And some people won't see it maybe till August. So you're going to have to put it in retrospect and rewrite a little bit to say that as of June 1st, the consumption tax, I presume it was taken off of June 1st, was it? I haven't noticed myself, so I'm presuming it was because everybody said it was going to be, so I'm presuming it was. I haven't even noticed. I don't buy very much. I make my wife do that. I make the money, she spends it. So anyway, some of these stories will have to be rewritten a little bit because of that. I mentioned already, they're already outdated. And so what do I do with a story that's outdated? That is fixed to a timed event that's going to be way old by the time anybody sees our publication. That's up to you guys to try to figure out. For example, another example is the basketball story. It was written about the basketball team, and that's interesting, but it was written before they played their final game of this tournament. So we don't have the results of the final game, and it was played in May, I think, middle of May or something. Well, that makes it not only an old story, an incomplete story. We don't know if they won their game. So that story should be updated. Whoever wrote that needs to do an update on it to tell us whether they won their game. And maybe it'd be helpful to get a couple more quotes as to what they think they might do in the future, whether they're going to keep playing. I don't know if they have any future tournaments. I don't know, do something more towards the future than the past. Because for a tournament that's already a month old and won't be seen for another month, that should not be the center of focus or the whammy for that story. It should be redone a little bit. I think it has some pretty good quotes in it that could be salvaged. So it doesn't necessarily have to be started from square one, and that's true of some of the others that have been put on, have been dated as well. So I think, that is just kind of a relative, what I consider the value is. In other words, if it has a higher number here, I would be more likely to put it towards the top of the page. But it's based on lots of different factors, the writing, the topic, whether I think it has been written well enough that people can understand it. It may even have been influenced, in fact, it will have been influenced by the art that came with it, because the content included the art, the photographs that you've submitted. So this tentative grade here, in comparing them one to another, includes the value of your art that you put into it. So I think you understand all of that. Okay, so I'm going to, hopefully some of you have figured out which team you're on. And I went ahead and printed out this for your teams. Who's on Team A? Do I take your sheet here? Team A? Let's take the sheet. Hello? Okay. Now, who's on Team A? Yellow. You have to take their sheet. You guys should be getting together now as soon as I stop talking. And so I have a sheet here for Team A, one for Team B, one for Team C, and whatever. So here, you guys figure it out. So you can get together with your teams and start discussing how you want to proceed. And as I said, I have made some editing and comments on this, so if somebody from each team, or more than one person, I don't care, wants to make a copy, all the stories and photos that I had as of when I downloaded. As I said, there's at least one person here who did not finish their assignment by the time I downloaded, so if they did, they should let me know so I can go. But you can also give your story directly to your team, but I need to grade it, so you need to give it to me too. So anybody want to make a copy of this? Okay, so I would say join your teams and go to work.